I want to support that is your opinion and your belief and your value. And I might disalign with that, but if it's not a deal breaker, let's figure out how we navigate this and so we support each other's differences.
Yeah. And I actually think that can make a really strong bond. Because how free is that to be in a space with someone that you disalign with that can say, I don't agree with you there, but I respect that you think different than I, or you believe different than I do, and I love you anyways. How free is that to be like, wow, I can be my own authentic person, not have to agree, I don't have to like fit into your mold. I can be my authentic self over here, and you still love me anyways. And we create safe, like, that's really beautiful, actually.
Welcome to the Relationship Psychologist podcast, a place where we dive deep into all things relationships. I'm Dana Mullen.
And I'm Alicia Hinger, and we are soul sisters, besties, and psychologists who are on a mission to change the culture of relationships.
Each week, we will discuss our expertise in the field of psychology, interview experts, spiritual leaders, and real people. Our goal in every episode is to give our listeners tools to implement in their lives today.
This podcast is not therapy, nor should it be a substitute for therapy, but instead we're here to motivate, support, and guide your conscious journey in this life.
The best way to support our podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
Thanks so much for joining. Let's dive in.
Back with Podcast with Cats.
Podcast with Cats. It's actually not, just so you guys don't think you've just tapped on the wrong podcast. It's not about cats. Alicia just always has an animal on her at all times. So
if you're not on YouTube and can't see us, that's why there's a cat in the screen. She has to get her face in here. So welcome to my life.
Welcome. Well, welcome to today's podcast. I mean, I'm excited about this one too. This one kind of follows suit from our last podcast, which was kind of just focusing on who am I in the relationship. And now it's who is your partner?
Yes, exactly. And we've done this before in a few podcasts. This comes, piggybacks off other podcasts about why is it important to know, not only yourself, but why is it important to know your partner? And what role does knowing your partner play in to all areas of your relationship? So I was just going to recap some things we talked about before in previous podcasts. Like, why isn't it? It's a crucial part. We're going to argue this. We're going to say this is knowing your partner is a crucial, important part of a relationship, just like knowing your kids is. So why is knowing who you're with an important part of an intimate relationship? And so obvious things are, we talk about this in our, always, but our beginning podcast about safety and security. So knowing your partner, actually knowing them, deeply knowing them, creates a foundation, is the foundation of safety and security. And so when I know those things about you, then I can build on these other things like communication, like how we communicate with each other and how I know maybe what your deficits are in communication, for example.
Yeah, or maybe where you come from in terms of your family of origin, right? With communication, right? It might be like, I know that you guys don't tend to talk about things in your family. So you end up being this like avoider of conflict. And so I get that about you. I understand that about you. I'm not going to shame you about it, but I'm going to figure out how do I understand that and still try to cultivate a relationship that feels like we both can be mutually vulnerable and we can talk about things. But I get that's not who you are naturally.
Yeah. So the other day, so again, I've been married for a long time, but I think it's a good reminder. So the other day we're having a discussion at the kitchen table with the kids, and a conversation came up and it kind of went sideways a little bit. My husband said some things that I didn't agree with at the table. So my kids left the table and I took them outside and was like, I just was hoping you could do that differently with our kids next time. You could have this conversation differently. You could say it like this or do this. And he said to me, and I was asking him to be more understanding of my daughter's position on this particular topic. And he paused and was like, do I ever do that? And I was like, nope. He's like, so why would I start now? I'm like, right. And it actually wasn't like a big topic. It wasn't like a deal breaker topic. And I was like, thanks for reminding me to quit trying to change you. I know who you are. And I know your position on that particular topic is not going to change. And so, right. So I paused and was like, thank you. There was no offense. There was actually relief. I was really grateful that he held me accountable and was like, this is who I am. Remember? And I'm like, right. Yes. So I went back to my daughter and said, this is who your dad is. And she's like, I know. I'm like, okay. So maybe that's a topic that you don't bring up with your dad.
Exactly. You understand the person. I know it's funny. I'm laughing because as you said that, I did the same thing again this morning. I feel like I've even said this like twice on the podcast, but my husband doesn't like to talk in the morning first thing. And I've already been up usually for an hour. So I'm like this like bunny that comes in. I'm like, guess what? I was just listening to this thing and like, we should do this thing. And I'm all over him and I'm so hyper. And he's like, fuck, like I just woke up. And I was like, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love you. Bye.
That's so So true.
Which is a lot of couples, right? It seems like whenever I say that to people, they're like, oh, that's totally me, or that's my partner. And it's like, so just know that about their communication style too. Like this is when they like to communicate, how they like to communicate, or their capacity around it. Sometimes some people aren't very emotional either, right? I mean, knowing your partner's kind of emotional history is important to be like, yeah, you're not all that like, you don't cry, you're not overly sensitive. And I can't change you and force you to be that. Instead, I can understand that. And I might say, maybe once in a while, I would love some warmth around this conversation. I know it's hard for you, but if you could try, maybe hold my hands, just give me a little sad face here and there, it would be helpful. Like, I know that you have to actively work on that, but I get that it's not natural for you.
Yeah. And all that comes from knowing who your partner is. So absolutely. So communication, safety and security, connection, of course, these are the foundations, like knowing your partner and knowing them well. And the more you know them, time and space is going to build that deeper connection, deeper security, deeper safety system. Things like, how does your partner receive respect? Like, what is respect to your partner? Or your whole values list. Like if you sit down and you do your list, I'll do my list, let's do our shared values. Like, what does that word respect mean to you? Because in some families, swearing is no big deal. And to somebody else, it's very disrespectful. So knowing your partner's language and their communication style and what that word means, or gestures.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
With my daughter at the dinner table was, she had a concern at school, and my husband's a very fix it kind of guy. And so he gave her advice on how to fix the situation, and she wanted to be validated. She just wanted to share her feelings because she doesn't wanted to hear how to fix it. So I said to him, I wish you wouldn't try to fix it. He's like, that's kind of what I do. Like, I've ever not done that. I'm like, right. So I know that's how he communicates, and that's how he's showing his love. He was giving her very logical, top-down, good ideas. At the end of the day, he gave her some good advice, but it wasn't the right timing for her to receive it. So it's my job to teach her, like, go to your dad when you want the advice. Go to your dad when you need to fix something, because he's really good at giving good advice and good fix it situations, for example.
Exactly. And I love that you just said that, Alicia. Same as piggybacking from our last podcast, which was around understanding your role in the relationship. It's like, understand your partner's role. Is your partner a people pleaser? Is your partner a problem solver? Are they the more logical one? Like, what do they do? So your husband said that. That's what I do. I problem solve. So know those roles and, appreciate them and maybe even lead with that. I really appreciate that you always go to problem solving. Like, you're such a solution focused person. And I love that. I'm more of a processor. So I love that you're more solution. How do we meet down the middle? Because I feel like our kid maybe wasn't ready for that yet. They still need to process, but I love that about you.
Yeah. And that's beautiful to be able to know who your partner is and to put a deposit in their account of appreciation, and then ask for, let's negotiate that. I know who you are, so let's do it differently. Let me help her process her feelings first, and then she'll come to you for all the great advice that you have to give, for example. So that's brilliant. Yeah. Knowing your partner is great for conflict. We can resolve conflict because I know who my partner is. And so through time and space, understanding their stressors, what's causing them to stress, what's causing them to feel dysregulated, historically and today. So knowing the whole history of that stuff and knowing what works to regulate them. So, my partner's, he's funny and he likes humor. So I know often I can use humor to regulate him. It's not very often that it doesn't work. So
yes, and that's such a key, right? Is like, when your partner is not the best self, when they're under a lot of distress, when they're, reactive in some way, what do you do to soothe your partner? Like, how do you actually understand what regulates to be able to co-regulate your partner, right? Like, how do you move in with relief and understand your partner, which will, that changes everything. I think regulation is the key to everything. It's literally everything.
Literally. Well, it's the nervous system. We're nervous system first, people second. Right. Yeah. Verbiage second, nervous system first. So yeah, knowing that. And this goes into some deeper topics that we don't get into fully today, but the idea of, resolving conflict and when they get distressed, of even knowing what those cues are, like knowing their history of their triggers and where those came from, and maybe that situation, why that would trigger them particular more than somebody else, like knowing who your partner is in situations, or knowing the rawness of some of their stories or their traumas, for example. So that's it. But it builds trust. This is going to build trust, knowing who your partner is and paying attention to time and space. Even little things like something silly as, my partner recently had a gallbladder issue and got it removed, emergency surgery. And so now I'm aware of like, oh, right, I can't feed you French fries. And my kids, if I'm making dinner, I'm like, I'm going to forego the greasy food. Not that we do much anyways, but because I know your gallbladder needs to heal. But there's no gallbladder, your body needs to compensate now differently. And so no greasy food. So that's different now than it was, a few months ago. So I'm going to time and space differently. And I'm going to be mindful of your body and your changes.
Yeah, I love that you just said that, because the health one always comes up for me, where it's like, it's the same as how we take care of maybe our kids or our animals, right? Like, their dietary stuff, their preferences. And just so the listeners know, we're going to get into some questions of how to understand your partners, because we're just kind of giving right now an overview of why it's important, but we will dive into some questions as to how to kind of get some of this information.
Yeah, because if you don't do these things well, then we have breakdowns. Right? We're trying to communicate and I don't understand your communication style. I don't understand why you can't receive what I'm saying. So now we're miscommunicating, which we see all the time in our offices. So often it's not the words being said or the content. 99% it's not content. It's 99% a misattunement of a not understanding of how you receive.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like your analogy too, Leash, that you use with couples around the animal analogy of like, you might be a cat and your partner's a dog and you're like, you want them to meow and they can't. So really understanding who is the animal that you're with. Like, don't project that this is who I am and so this is who my partner must be. I really need to understand the animal that they are. What is their preference? How do they digest information? How do they move through life? What are their reactions to things? Like, what's really going on with this person that I'm in relationship with?
Yeah, huge. And what are their needs being a different animal than me?
Yes.
They're a different animal. We're all different. And so what are their needs? We did last time, like, what are my needs? And I'm going to teach people how to treat me. That was our last podcast. But what are my partner? He's a different animal than me, or she's a different animal than me. So what are her needs? How do his needs?
That's a cool even little take-home exercise that somebody could do too, is write down what you think your partner's needs are. And then you can check them later. Be like, hey, I think these are your needs. And, maybe I think I know some of your triggers and I think that I know what would soothe you. Like, here's some ideas of what I think. And am I actually accurate?
Yeah, that's a great take home. Because it makes you kind of reevaluate, time and space changes. Your needs were this. Maybe that's not the same as it was 10 years ago or last year.
Yeah.
Right? You went through just recently, some big life changes, losing your dad. Your needs have changed and have been, acutely different for the past, couple of years, but really the past couple of months. And so your partner had to really tune in, and he's brilliant at tuning into your needs. Like, I even love, the day you talked about the day that your dad passed. Your partner, Dennis, was well aware of the day and the timing and when to be there for you and when to take the kids and to leave you space. Like, his attunement skills in that moment in time were so bang on. And then yours, like, you were so tuned into your mom in that moment in time of like helping her, watching your dad and helping your mom, having a hard time, like, trying to make sure you could still breathe. And you're like, Mom, this is the process. All of those levels of attunement, massive.
Yes.
Massive.
Oh, so much. And I know that we'll do a podcast at some point kind of processing some of that, because there was so much beautiful stuff in my dad's passing. But yeah, I think that the idea of understanding your partner is just like, it's as important as understanding yourself, right? I mean, it's like we're on this ship together. So I need to know who you are inside and out. Like, I need to be a good handler of you. I know our colleague and mentor, Dr. Stan Tatkin, says that, you have to be a good handler of your person. And if you're not, you're in trouble. Because when they start to, if they're like a horse and you're riding with them and they start to lose control, you're gonna be part of that fall. So you really you don't have to understand them to the point of being like, I fully understand what it's like to be you, because you're not going to fully understand your partner, but you do have to, on a cognitive level, at least on like I can accept and I can start to understand who you are. I might not feel it, but I'm getting you. I'm learning you. I'm curious about you.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
It's a good visual you gave me. Like, I'm thinking, if you're going to leave your dog with your mom, or if I'm going to, like, yesterday I had a horse handler at my house and he was going to put some hours on my filly, on my young horse. And so I showed him where everything was, and he'd ridden her already once, and then I had to go to watch Drew's game. So I looked out the back window and I could see my horses running around in circles in the pasture. And I'm like, what is happening? And I looked, I'm like, ooh, he's trying to catch them and doesn't know. And so I went out there and taught him how to catch her. I'm like, just watch what I do. Because he's a cowboy and he's going to rope her. I'm like, no, that's not what we do here. We don't rope at my house. And this is why. And I was like, watch how I catch her. Put the rope down, walk up to her. These are therapy horses. They're not roping horses. And so if you were to leave your partner with a babysitter, like if I leave, because I left her in his care, and I said, here's my horse, here's her buttons, here's her triggers, here's how to catch her, here's how to talk to her, here's where she likes to be scratched, here's how she likes to be, here's how she hates this bit, use this bit, she hates her ear like this. Like I could give him, he was like, whoa, you know this horse. I'm like, yeah, I know her good. But I shouldn't choose a baby. Like I know all her buttons. So could you do that with your partner? Could you leave your partner in someone else's care and give them the list of all your partner's buttons, like how to care for your partner well? It'd be a fun little assignment.
You know what is funny, Alicia? Dr. Stan Tatkin actually, and Tracy Tatkin do that in their couples retreat. So one of the interventions for the couples is that they say, I want your partner is going to be left with somebody else for the weekend. Explain your partner to this person. Well, if I was doing you, I'd be like, okay, well, Alicia, she really loves breakfast. It's really important. First of all, it's important for her to get a good night's sleep. She really has to be put to bed. She's going to try and stay up late. She's going to be on her phone. She's going to be surfing stuff, but you need to tell her it's time to go to bed and make sure she gets enough sleep. It's really important. She needs a pillow around her head. If there's noises, she can't have extra noises. So she needs that. When she wakes up in the morning, she needs her coffee, and she's got a protein drink that she drinks. She needs that, and she needs breakfast. That can be eggs. It has to be fried. It can't be scrambled. What else does she like? She likes yogurt.
Yes.
And then she likes some alone time. She likes to have like where she could just walk outside a little bit or read, or just she needs some recharge alone time before she's in somebody else's care. And then when she's ready, maybe that's like 9:30 or 10, then you can kind of come into her space and you can kind of check in with her. And so like you have to, how well do you know your partner? Can you explain a whole weekend?
That's a great assignment. I didn't know Stan did that. I love that. That's great. You think alike, but think about that. Like just for fun, write a list. If you're going to leave your partner in someone's care, like you would leave your kid or your animal or your dog, we leave these things. This is their favorite foods. This is their nap time. This is, how I like to be scratched. Like all the things you just described in detail, like, well done. Good attunement. Could you do that with your partner? And then actually maybe fun to share with your partner and be like, what did I miss? Because even to hear you say that, it's embarrassing because I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a pain in the ass. But it's all true. Everything was banging through. I'm like, yep. And then there's something about that feels like, oh, you get me. Like you totally validate me. Thank you. And you put up with my pain in the assness that is who I is. Like I am who I am is what it is.
It is. And I think it's important because then we can understand our partner and just go, or if it's our best friend, right? Like how you and I kind of get each other. It's like, I can do those things for you. And then you feel seen and heard and understood, right? Without you having to ask, because nobody likes to be needy. Like we don't want to actually have to ask our partner, like, hey, you know what? I really like a back rub and I'd love it if you'd make me a coffee every now and then and say I look pretty. Like nobody wants to say that, right? But we want them to do those things. We're like, I have a story in my mind that you're going to be this partner that's going to do these things for me, but you actually have no idea that that's what's really meaningful for me. So I need to help you understand me, and I need to understand you and get curious. So yeah, I love this exercise. This is a fun take home.
That is a great assignment. Okay, take number 1. Write a list of your partner's needs for the weekend or a week if you want to go even further.
Yeah. Who are they? What? Yeah, exactly. What do they need? Love it.
I love it. These ones are kind of, we said to be ready, like, knowing their past traumas, knowing their history of relationship, knowing their family environments, family of origin environment stuff, values and beliefs which come from that. And I think the last one too I want to talk about just quickly is like knowing your partner's capacity, like knowing their capacity for empathy, knowing their capacity for compassion, knowing their capacity for communication, knowing their capacity for emotion, knowing which goes into, capacity for, how long they can stay in conversation, or how long they can stay in distress, or how long they can stay present, or even for touch, their capacity for touch, their capacity for closeness, their capacity for proximity. Because if we don't know, and these are going to like your attachment systems and your wounds a little bit too, but you could really misappraise, self-regulation and, attachment system stuff for dismissive. So if someone gets, if someone doesn't know their partner and then they pull away in intimacy or pull away with, in an infection situation, if they don't know the partner's history with affection or intimacy or connection or touch, and then they might receive that as a disconnection. It's actually not meant to be that way. It's a partner's own nervous system based on their own attachment systems. So
yes, exactly. I mean, and that's body first, right? Like we have to, whoever's body in the relationship is more reactive or tight or closed off. I mean, or just even in that moment, that person leads. It doesn't matter what's going on. Even if that person was in the wrong, you have to respect the body. That's a boundary. And so, acknowledge that and validate that and see into that. I like also just the intervention of understanding that you need to understand what will collapse. What are 3 things that will collapse your partner? Like that will make them fall to the ground, right? Like somebody brings this up, a trigger from their history. You need to know what those are. Let's say 3, and 3 things that will bring them up, that will like light their soul up. So know what those couple things are for your partner. And if you don't know, get curious. Those are really important things because, for instance, if the things that will make them crash to the ground are going to be brought up possibly in a public kind of, setting, you need to be able to protect them. Same as you would your kid. If your kid was scared of a dog, let's say, and you were going, and I'm going over to Alicia's acreage, I'm going to have to protect my kid and be like, okay, I need to help Alicia understand those dogs are scary to my kid. How do I protect my kids so they don't feel shamed or whatever it is, or if it's my partner, whatever scenario that is.
Yeah. So those go beyond the playful ones of like leaving your partner with a person for the weekend. These are way deeper of like what collapses. Those are like, think about that question. It's a big question. I love that you brought it up. What collapses your partner? Like what are the main, think of 3 things. And if you don't know, let's get curious about those things. And because knowing those things, again, I'm your person. I'm going to be the person that's going to have your back and protect you from whatever that might come up in situations that might collapse you. And alternatively, what brings you up? Like, how can I shift you quickly? How can I shift you? And so I know you maybe what collapses you, or I even know what triggers you in even smaller ways, but I know how to shift you out of that quickly because I know it brings you up. I know how to make you laugh. Yeah. I know how to expand your energy. I know how to bring you joy. I know how to distract you over here with something that's playful and beautiful. I know how to connect to you. I know how to flirt with you. Yeah. Those are big.
Yeah, those are big. And just for some examples, just so people understand what we mean by like crash to the ground, like what will bring you down. Those could be something like, say from your childhood, maybe you had a reading disorder. And so you stuttered maybe when you were reading. And so you've always carried that, like maybe one-on-one, you're like, oh, I have no problem when I'm reading by myself, but suddenly I'm in an environment where I have to read out loud. And now my stutter starts to come up. That could be something that my partner would understand that makes me crash. I start to get totally dysregulated. I start to get panicky and now I'm not doing well. Or maybe a trauma, maybe a ski accident. And then somebody starts to say, hey, let's all go skiing together. This will be a great couples adventure. And the person's like, oh, no. And then the partner has to be like, no, we don't love skiing, but we love tobogganing or something. Like those could be just like a slight example of what that could look like.
Yeah, exactly. So having those conversations with your partner where you can get into those history questions.
Yeah.
What are your things right now in your garden that poison your tree?
Yeah, definitely.
So these questions I have some fun, gentle questions to kind of get the ball rolling that might lead to those bigger questions. So we're going to go through a bunch of questions so we can kind of play with these. So I recommend maybe if you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, listen to the questions and then just pause and write the ones down that resonate with you. And then I'm going to give you some authors here too, and then ask these questions with your partner. And not just a question where you're looking for a black and white answer, where you're telling a story. Like the first, for example, like what are your goals and aspirations in life? So these are kind of like John Gottman's love map questions. So if I look at John Gottman's love map questions, I'm not just going to answer the questions. I'm going to tell the story. My aspirations are this and this and this because of this and this and this. And so I'm listening to my partner and I'm asking and getting curious about, well, why is that important to you? What do you value about that? What inspires you about that? What are you passionate about? Like all the what's and why is the curiosity behind that question. So one question could be that's it for the night. That could be date night question, just that one question.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking about that actually when you said that. I was like, how funny is that? Like even how those change, right? Like your goals and aspirations in life. I mean, you may have certain goals and you're like, oh, actually we already achieved those. So what's my new ones? Oh my gosh, I actually haven't thought about that. So that could be that could be hours of a conversation, just like writing down ideas. Well, I want this, and I want this together. That one's so good. I love that.
I want success or I want happiness. You're like, well, what does that mean to you today? What does it mean to you in the past? What does it mean to you today? And what will it mean to you tomorrow? Do you think where are you heading? What direction are you heading? And as a partner, I'm listening, being curious, for all these reasons we discussed. And how can I serve you? How can I help you? How can I support you in that way?
And how can we measure this? I love goals that are measurable. So instead of just saying, I want happiness or I want success, it's like, well, two questions, like why? Because you have to know your why in life, because that's going to drive you. And also, like, what does that look like? Like specifically, well, measurable happiness is every day I feel like an 8 out of 10. I'm doing my exercises. I'm reading the stuff I want. I'm around the people that I love. I'm, doing this thing in my business very specifically every day. So have measurable things. Like, I think that the key to life is really that you have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish and that you're working towards it every day. So you can at least measure that and you can go, wow, today I was really focused here and I did awesome there. And I didn't do everything, but like actually have something that feels like it's a concrete, like strategic plan of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And if your partner knows your why, to hold you accountable, to remind of the why, not of the activity. So if you're like, my why is I want to achieve this thing in my business or this with my health or what else, maybe let's just do a health one. I want to achieve this thing. So I want to like do this new eating plan or whatever your health goal or workout or meditate or whatever your health goal is. And so your partner, like my partner, he's often like, did you do your thing you're going to do? And I'm like, no, but you want to get to this, you're working towards this, right? Like he points me in the direction of my why, because you want to get here, right? So I share with him my why. And then I'm like, right. And it holds me accountable to go do the thing. So for me, it's more playful to point me in the direction of the why rather than the what. Because the what I already know. And if you point me in the direction of the what, I feel more resistant because that's my personality. He knows that. So he's like, why are you doing that again? How's it working for you? I'm like, shut up. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. And I think that's also why it's important to understand your partner is that you start to understand how they like to be communicated with, right? I mean, we start to kind of go, I think same as a parent, when you have multiple kids, you figure out, okay, that kid likes it when I talk to them like this kid likes it when I approach them like this. Like you start to kind of understand, oh, that's how you like it when I do it like this. Or even an animal, like you have lots of horses and lots of dogs and lots of cats. So each one of them is a little bit different of what they like from you.
All different, for sure. For sure, they're all different. So it's key. Yeah. So the what and the why, like what's the goal?
Yeah.
It's a good one. This is a fun one. So what are some of your favorite childhood memories? And this one can be expanded 1,000 ways, but because it runs deep into pleasure, joy, happiness, acceptance, belonging. Like it can run deep into it can run deep into like memories of connection, memories of, of places. If the favorite childhood memory was that lake, maybe now you know why the lake is so important to that person, like whatever it is. But your favorite childhood memories, that could be a whole nother date night question.
Yeah, love it. That's such a good one.
Yeah. How do you like to spend your free time? Because it's an interesting question to think about. Because it gives you choice. How do you like to spend your free time? Not how do you, but how do you like to? And it makes me kind of think, oh, am I spending my free time the way I want to or the way I should? Like, am I actually doing what I should? Right? That's that jail word. Or am I doing actually what I want to do, what I get to do because it's called my free time? Like, am I reading that book or doing that meditation or going for that walk or playing with my dog or am I scrubbing the toilets?
Yeah. And it's nice for you to know that with your partner and for yourself even. I mean, these questions are not just good for your partner. These are actually really good for yourself too. So I like, it can go both ways on this one. But what did your partner, how do they like to spend their free time and how are you encouraging that and supporting that and even prescribing it? Like I know sometimes I'll say that to my husband, I'll say, why don't you go golfing this weekend? And he's like, why? And I'm like, because you enjoy it. And I'd like to make time for you to do that. Like go and take 4 hours or 5 hours, like go do that thing. And that's like prescribing what people love. You feel so good.
So good. Because it's like permission. You're kind of open that door to be like, wow, she said, not that she said I can go, like I need permission, but having permission in a loving way feels expensive. It kind of already creates the joy of like, thanks, Dana. Thanks for reminding me of my joy, that I actually like golfing. Yeah, that's great. Or if it's free time instead of golfing, what are you listening to these days? Like, what's your favorite podcast these days? Or what topics are you really into? What are you reading? Like, what are you researching? What are you, right? That's
another one, right? Is like, what are your favorite books? What are your favorite authors? What do you love to read or listen to? Like, what are those things for your partner and for you? Again, I think that these ones can kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. Along with that, what are your favorite songs?
Yeah.
Maybe your favorite. what songs for you, like I'm working on an outline for my women's group coming up here. And so one of my interventions is music therapy that I'm doing. And so I'm listening to old songs to try to create a state change, right? And so I'm like, oh yeah, I love that song. It's having, so I played it for my husband yesterday. I was like, listen to my playlist for it's going to be so good. And he was like, oh yeah, I remember those songs. They're all like, women empowerment or girls want to have fun kind of songs, but not just like, what are your favorite songs, or what are songs for you that instantly put you in, like, we talk about your playlist. What's your playlist? What puts you in a good mood? Asking your partner that again, like, what's your current playlist?
Yeah. And I always say I have my shifting playlist of like, these are the songs I go to when I'm not in a good mood. This is what I listen to. But what my husband listens to is very different when he's in a different state. So even playing that music for them, being like, oh, I'm going to put on their music right now because I know what they like.
Yeah. And there's any new songs that we can add to that playlist, because there's always new music coming out. So is there anything, there's a song that I haven't heard yet? Play me your new song. Or what's a movie on? Like if I know if you're in my house and you and your kids are here and it's kind of like nothing to do, I'm like, I'm gonna put some Adam Sandler on because you're all gonna be like, yeah. We brought Adam Sandler movies out. You gotta put that on. You guys are all gonna watch it and have a good time.
All right, totally. So
right. So what's a movie that your partner enjoys? Or a specific actor that your partner enjoys? Yeah, playlist movies.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit deeper question. What story can you share or experience have you had that plays a really important role or may play an important role in our relationship? Kind of a deeper question. Like, is there experience you had in the past that may play a significant role in our relationship? And that's a 1,000-answer question probably, because yes, and. But it's even, like when you ask that question, what's on top of your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind about what's going to happen in my relationship? Because I'm going to probably relate that to what's happening in my life today. I'm going to look at my life.
Yeah, I think so many different things can come up, right? For people, I think that there's going to be multiple things that can come up, but just going through and being like, hey, there's this story. Like there's so many different things that could be playing in our relationship now. And that question, I think that could be asked multiple times, like throughout your whole relationship, for sure.
What are the strengths that you think your partner brings to the relationship?
That's a good one.
The deficits already, what are the deficits? Know what they are. But what are their strengths? And do I utilize their strengths in our family? Do I
praise those, or do I give gratitude to those strengths, or do I acknowledge them, especially in front of other people? Like, I love this about you, or behind their back, right? I mean, what you say about your partner behind their back is the truth of your relationship. So be careful. If you notice that you're bad talking your partner behind their back, you've got some real shit to deal with in your relationship, because they are the part of your relationship. So you're throwing your relationship under the bus. Yeah. On the flip side, if you talk positively, if you talk about their strengths behind their back, what are those things that you would say? And do you say them to their face? Because there's nothing better than getting that feedback of like, I love that about you. Like that, to me, that's like your strength.
Yeah. Because again, it's a business. And so if I'm going to utilize the business, the strengths of each other to make it the best business it can be for that part of a relationship, I know your strengths are this. I'm going to utilize that. And I'm going to praise you and be grateful and I'm going to make different strengths. And so we're using each other in beautiful ways to strengthen the business, to strengthen the relationship. Yeah. But I love what you said. That's an accountability piece of what you say about your partner behind their back is the truth. Ouch. Be mindful of that, of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I find, this is an important one actually first. How do you handle stress? Like so asking your partner, how do you handle stress? Like, what do you look like when you get stressed? What do you do? What do you show up as? How do you speak? What happens to your body? What do you do under stress? And then do I know how to, help them shift states? Do I knowing the information about maybe their stories or their music or their likes or their food, whatever, do I know how to shift their state when they come home in a state of distress? But does my partner recognize that when they're stressed?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and for some people, they'll already know that, right? They'll be like, oh, I know when my partner's stressed. I can see it in their eyes. Their eyes look big and kind of like they're not excited, like they're stressed out. They're like scanning for threat. Their jaw is tight. They slam doors. They walk around and huff and puff. They go to
the room and get quiet and avoid. They don't come home.
They walk away. Yeah, they pour a drink, they go have a smoke, they call a friend, they go play video games, they go for a ride on their bike, whatever it is. Yeah. Those are important things to know. And then, like you said, then what do I do when they are in stress? How do I validate them? How do I see into them? How do I provide comfort? Not conversation. When somebody is in a high stress, you want to make sure that they feel seen and like understood before you start to get into the content. That's the person first, problem second. The content is always second.
Always second. But that makes me want to think about, we talked about this earlier, you and I, what do you do when you and your partner misalign? So are there things you and your partner, which probably yes, misalign on? Maybe it's a value, maybe it's something that's really, really important, right? And so what are the things that we misalign that may be deal breakers? And what are things we misalign on that may be really a value? And how do we negotiate that misalignment? What are we going to do? So how do I know my partner's opinion on politics, religion, kids? I don't know. The kind of coffee we drink in our house. Like it could be anything, right? Yeah. But is that thing that we misalign on, first and foremost, do I know what it is? Have we discussed it? And do we have a negotiated agreement about how we're going to navigate that topic with each other and in public?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how we'll maybe protect that topic if it comes up, because we know we disalign on it and we don't want to show that to people, right? Because then that's showing the business has a weakness. This bubble or this ship has a weakness. So how do we have each other's back, even if we don't, fully agree with each other? I know I said this earlier as you and I were talking, but that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from my parents, was that they had to understand each other, but they didn't agree with each other always. It was like, I get that that's where you fall, but that's not where I fall, but I can still understand that about you and I don't have to agree with it. Some of these are deal breakers, big time, and you need to evaluate, is this a deal breaker? And if it's not, how are we going to navigate this? And instead, especially these really big conversations, don't think that you should have one big conversation and get through it. Like some of these you have to kind of cut up into really small kind of chunks and be like, maybe over the next couple weeks or month even, we're going to keep talking about this topic and maybe we'll do it for 10 minutes at a time or 20 minutes. And then we'll be like, okay, we got to wrap it up. We'll come back to it.
We're going to create negotiation until we've exhausted the topic, until we feel safe and secure. So we misalign on this topic. We disagree about whatever the topic is. So insert your topic of choice or whatever your topic is. And we're going to agree. We acknowledge where we misalign. That I don't, the sky is purple, the sky is blue, whatever the topic is, we see it differently. But how can we still create safety and security knowing that we're never going to agree on that thing? And I'm talking a big thing. It's a big important thing in your relationship. Yeah. And I like what you said. And I'm not going to bring it up in front of others and throw my partner, well, he thinks the sky is purple, what an idiot. And we're not going to bring it up. Or if it comes up in conversation that, oh, you guys don't agree with that. You're like, yeah, but I love him anyways. And I respect that we have different opinions, and that's really okay. And we have our own negotiated space of where that lives. So we protect it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love even just saying that we protect this. That just feels so good. Like I would just respect a couple so much if they said that, but we don't talk about that. We've negotiated that. We've taken care of that. And that's like, whew, like you've put up a boundary and now I respect that. And like, good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah. Because this flame we talked about in our last topic, the flame now is the relationship, and I'm going to honor the shit out of that relationship. And so I'm going to let people around me know if they know somehow we don't align on a certain topic, whatever that is, right? That maybe it's religion, but that's okay. We figured out our stuff. We've negotiated. We know how we're going to. So I've honored that space, and it's ours, and it's not up for discussion with you.
Yeah. And I feel like, Alicia, we do that with our kids. Maybe not everybody does, but I would say people probably do it more with their kids than they do with their partner, right? Where they'll understand that their kid has a viewpoint on something or a sensitivity around something or a deficit or a disability around something, and we will protect, or a viewpoint on something, but we'll protect them in it, right? We're like, oh, no, that's okay. My little boy or my girl or whatever is like this. And we will keep their flame going, even if we disalign with it. Because sometimes we might be like, yeah, I don't agree with that. Like, I think that's weird or silly, but it's where you're at. That's your truth. That's your authenticity. And I don't want you to abandon that for our attachment. So I want you to stay true. And we've talked about that, right? I mean, it's no different with our partner. I want you to be authentic. I don't want you to pick attachment over authenticity. So if you believe in this religion or this viewpoint in politics or this viewpoint in medicine or vaccines, if we want to get into the real heavies, I want to support that is your opinion and your belief and your value. And I might disalign with that, but If it's not a deal breaker, let's figure out how we navigate this. And so we support each other's differences.
Yeah. And I actually think that can make a really strong bond. Because how free is that to be in a space with someone that you disalign with that can say, I don't agree with you there, but I respect that you think different than I, or you believe different than I do, and I love you anyways. How free is that to be like, wow, I can be my own authentic person, not have to agree, I don't have to like fit into your mold. I can be my authentic self over here, and you still love me anyways. And we create safe, like, that's really beautiful, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Really beautiful bond, I think, of a place to disalign and have a safe, secure foundation. Because most of the people in life, I think, experience the opposite. If you don't align with me, we can't be friends. If you don't align with me, we can't be in the same space. If you don't align with me, we can't hang out. That's wrong.
It totally is. Yeah. And I think that probably is, Leash, the goal in life, I think, is to be your authentic self, right? To not be a prisoner to somebody else's viewpoint of who they want you to be or who you think you should be, to just be that flame that you are, and to support your partner's flame also. We don't like this idea that we have to be aligned in everything, or that we, even that we preached, the couple bubble or being on the ship. I mean, we're not preaching that you guys are identical people. You are very different people, and you're in a partnership. And so I always think, like, that's why I think we attract some of the polarity in our relationship, because it's like, oh, it's so different. Like, I don't like that. I mean, we don't usually have two really loud people or two really, really passionate, like strong-willed people. We usually have a balance of, like, one's a little bit more passive in this, and the other one's stronger, and the other one's more emotional in this, and the other one's more logical. Like, we have these differences, and these are the things that couples come to us with, and they're like, oh, it drives me crazy that my partner does this. And it's like, that is actually who they are. And so honor that and appreciate that, rather than, if you want to be married to yourself, then be alone, because then you can be.
Yeah, exactly. And again, imagine what it would feel like to be in a place where, if you and I misaligned on something, I could think of a situation recently where I misaligned with somebody, and I still do, to my core of my being, religion, and I don't want to get into the religious debate with anybody, but because I don't have any religious affiliation. Spirituality, yes. Religion, no. But her religion very much, she believes that, homosexuality is a sin. And so that is against my core belief, to my core, like my sister, like, it doesn't matter. That's not what I believe at all. And so rather than have a disagreement and a fight, I was like, help me understand that belief for you, because it's so far from what I believe. And I felt triggered in it. Doesn't mean I didn't feel my stuff. I felt triggered in that dialogue, and I felt triggered in that discussion, but I was like, I don't understand how you can even think that way. So help me understand your thinking and your religious belief around this thing. And once I listened to her talk about her belief, I was like, oh, I totally can see. I don't agree at all, but I can totally see why you think that, based on your beliefs and based on what you've been taught. That I disagree 100%, but to her core, I was like, I can totally see why you believe that. And if that's your belief, then that will be terrifying, to know somebody that you love that doesn't align with that they might go to hell or whatever that is. Like, I'm like, I get that. And so we can stay friends. And I said to her, my belief is totally different. I told, like, so I did, and I dialogued with her my beliefs and why it's totally different. She was like, yeah, I don't align with your beliefs at all, but I can see how for you it's, so we can disagree on that thing, which is a very core for her value. Right. And for me too, actually, that's a hill I would die. It's an important one for me. Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so we are still in a relationship, and we're still friends, and I honor her difference of beliefs. Our agreement is that topic isn't something that we're ever going to agree on. We don't discuss it really. But I honor that and I actually feel good that we can have that dialogue of, I get her point of view and she gets mine, without judgment. If I don't align with you, but I fully appreciate why you think the way you do, knowing who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, Leash, this is what we do as therapists, right? I mean, we see clients all the time that we disalign with. And it's always a fun opportunity, not that we, we self-disclose, but not on maybe as hot topics as we could. But I mean, I've had many times where I've said to clients where they've come in and said, my partner or my mother or my brother, whoever, is like this, and I can't believe that they're like that. And I'll say, and then they'll say something like, maybe like, what do you think? Or where do you stand? And I'll be like, you know what? It doesn't matter where I stand, but I can tell you that there's multiple times in this relationship where we disalign, but I can still provide space to support you and to see into your experience. And that is really valuable for people to understand that I am not going to hold some self-righteous view that is going to block me from understanding you. Because when we stay in self-righteousness, we can't move, right? If I'm right, then the relationship doesn't come first. Yeah. So it's like you can hold your belief that this is my truth and this is what I stand for, and so can your partner or your friend. And maybe it's a deal breaker or maybe it's not. But if it's not, have those conversations. Like they can be so enriching when you can I just want to say, just a simple active listening exercise of, say you talk and then I hear you and I say, okay, so Alicia, what I heard you say was that you really strongly believe that gender or sexual orientation should be open and it should be accepted. And you really to your core believe that we should accept people for who they are. And is that right? Did I get that?
Right. Yeah.
And then, you might say, yeah, or no, you missed this one piece that was like this other piece. Okay, so I got that. Okay, good. Okay, so now you have been heard and now maybe I can, we go back and forth. So just, it feels very programmed sometimes to do that, but it's a really beautiful exercise to do.
Yeah, it slows it down. So to actually listen, to actually understand, to actually hear the person saying, and to give them the freedom. It opens up freedom in the relationship that we don't have to align to be in connection. Yeah. Actually, a connection is the freedom sometimes to be misaligned, and to understand is more important, way more important than alignment.
Yeah, it's most important for you to be in alignment with yourself. Like what you stand for, what you believe, what you value, that's important for you to stay true to. And then hear out your partner also, because they have their own truth.
Yeah. So that's a big one.
Yeah.
Knowing what your partner's values are, beliefs are, which ones are different than yours. And then how do we navigate misalignment on certain topics, and really having space and time to negotiate that with your partner. Okay, this topic we're never going to agree on. That's okay. Do you understand my point of view? And do I understand yours enough to now negotiate how we're going to, it could be around parenting. It could be around, my partner thinks we should do timeouts and he thinks we should do time ins, or my partner believes in corporal punishment or whatever. And so again, I might disagree 100%, but like, tell me why you think that. And let's, okay, now how are we going to do that? Knowing we misalign, how are we going to do those behaviors around that topic? How are we going to navigate the behaviors? We can negotiate the behaviors as a couple, but we can still be true to our values.
Yeah.
What are your partner's primary emotional needs in this relationship? Like, what are their emotional needs? What are they, do I know, again, not that's my job to fill all their needs. And Esther Perel talks about this loss in her podcast. I think she's got some really good, she'd say, 100 years ago, our primary relationship, so our intimate relationship, was for, procreation and for, safety, some connection, whatever. But our other connection needs for friendship and for community were all being fed elsewhere. We belong to like a tribe. And so we'd have so many people filling our different parts of our needs, emotional needs. And now we want, for business and for food now we want one person to fill all of those roles. I want you to be my best friend, but also be novel to me and be interesting to me. So be interesting and different. So agree with me, but don't always agree with me, but don't piss me off either. Yeah. Right. And be sexy, but also be safe and secure, which are opposite spectrums, right? Pay bills with me, and talk about finances, but also don't stress me out about finances. Raise my kids with me, but also don't piss. We're thinking one person can fill the role of the entire tribe.
Right. I love the other one too. Like, be exciting, but not too exciting. Like be predictable, but not like so predictable, like a little unpredictable at times. I know it is so confusing, but it's important to know, I think, just even what their core emotional needs are, so you can help outsource that for them. So, if you're like, okay, part of your core emotional need is activity. Like, you need exposure to like outside and moving your body. And a need for you is, I need to be moving in doing something. So I will prescribe that for you. I'll say, why don't you go and do that? You're not taking care of yourself well enough lately. And I can't do that one for you. So go and do that. I'm telling you, go have permission to do that. But I love that. I think the idea of it, it took a village to raise a child. I think, a couple relationship is no different. It takes a village to keep this relationship going. It takes our couple friends, our individual friends, maybe our family of origin, maybe our church, maybe our support group, maybe our AA team meeting people. I don't care, whatever it is. Like, it takes a village to, be in this journey of life.
Yeah. And then knowing what your partner's maybe unmet needs are that they haven't asked for. It goes back to the individual stuff we talked about last time. Like, is your partner able to speak and verbalize and, ask what they need? So what are your partner's needs that aren't being met that you maybe can point out and talk about with your partner? So knowing like how they show up and how their needs show up. Do they show up as whining? Do they show up as martyr? Do they show up as doormat? Do they show up, right? So being able to pay attention to your partners, how they show up in a relationship or how they show up for their own needs.
Yes. And if you do notice them showing up that way, you can, in not a shaming way, you can acknowledge that as a part, right? Like, if I understand that 93% of communication is nonverbal, I could walk into a conversation with my partner who's maybe being really defensive in a soft way and in a playful, soft way, and just be like, "Oh, I notice that there's a part of you being really defensive right now, and I just want to like love you, and I really want to see into that part right now." In a way that is not like, what? Like, where he's going to get more defensive, right? Where I'm like, oh, like I'm just going to soften. So I understand how you're showing up right now in this relationship.
Massive. And I guess too, like, what does your partner think is important to fulfill a relationship? Like, what are their relationship goals? What are their relationship ideas? What are their family of origin, teachings about relationships? So what do they think is important about relationship? That's a pretty big question to know about your partner. Like, what are their ideas, goals, values, thoughts, stories, beliefs around what is a relationship, what makes it good?
Yeah. And what is the ideal relationship, right? Like, it's like, what does their ideal relationship look like? And what do you write as your ideal relationship? Because there might be some differences. And then that's something to talk about also. Like, oh, you see it kind of a little bit different than me. And because what you want is ideally how you're showing up, right? So you might be both showing up differently, thinking that you're trying to co-create this relationship that you're not even on the same page with.
Yeah. One of our relationship things we do in our office pretty early on, like session 1 usually, is like, why are you here? What do you want to work on? And so I'm writing down their goals, which is kind of like my, flag in the sand of like, we're going to move towards that then, right? That's what you guys really want. Often I'm like, change it halfway through. I'm like, so you said you wanted this, but actually we want something over here. But I'm going to hold you accountable to say, what are your ideals? Like, write magic wand question. What are your ideal? What would it look like if you're in the ideal relationship? Write those things down, and I'm going to head them in that direction. So what are your partner's ideals?
Yeah.
And what do you consider the most important elements for creating that? So I know my ideals, and what do I think people will say? Oh, it's our communication, or oh, it's our time together, or whatever. What would your partner say are the most important elements to create that ideal? Like, what do they think is the work that, the steps to get there?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, because you might have different steps, right? Like, if you're like, this is the goal, this is what we both agree. How do we actually think that we're going to get there? Like, what does that look like if that, that goal at the top of the pyramid? Like, how do we get up there?
Yeah. What makes your partner feel safe and supported in the relationship? How do you know when they feel safe? How do you know when they feel supported? What are their cues? What do they look like? What do they act like? How do they speak? How do you know when they're feeling safe and secure? How do you know where they're not?
Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah. And how do you know when the relationship is
and how is the person feeling safe and secure or not, and how is the relationship? Those are so good. And I think that people get good cues on that. Like, they'll get it. You can't not communicate, so you're communicating by ignoring somebody or by not attuning to whatever their thing is. That's your own accountability of like, well, I'm not even noticing that thing because I'm in my own stuff right now. But like, you notice, you can't not notice when your person isn't well. I mean, unless you're blind, like, you literally cannot miss. You can't. I mean, it's bullshit, right? I mean, we would call people out on that. We'd be like, what do you mean you missed that? That's so, look at them right now. Like, just look at their face and their body. What are they experiencing? People who are really low or depressed or stressed out, they show it. And so are you ignoring that? Are you just walking by that and just going like, oh, wish you could just like grow up and be an adult, like take care of yourself. Like, oh, I mean, that's what people do, right? And we do that sometimes too. I mean, we're not perfect.
Yeah. But that would go back to right? That goes back to last week's podcast of, why are you doing that? Like, what's your story of why you're walking by your partner that just fell off their bike and you're like, oh my God, what's your stuff coming up?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think and this is an ongoing thing. I know we said this last time too, that like, this is going to be often like forever self-evaluation of, okay, I'm noticing my partner's doing that. I'm noticing that I'm shutting down or pulling away. My partner is showing that they need something, and instead I'm turning my back and I'm shutting down. So what's my role and what's my partner's role and what's really going on here? So
what's really
that's
happening?
some good self.
Yeah. And then unlayering that question of what's really happening here, because it's probably not the surfacing. It's probably the thing behind the thing behind the thing that's really happening here. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you appreciate about your partner? And that could be a daily question, right? That's the gratitude thing. And you're good at gratitude. That's one thing that you bring to relationship often, I think, into life, right? What do you really appreciate? And could you make that a challenge in your day of every day, something different? I appreciate this.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you then start to look at the everyday things, like what can I also look for and dig deeper to find the appreciation things about.
Imagine just how different life would be for a second. When you're saying that, I was thinking, when I see somebody doing something like at the school, say like, being really sweet with their kid, I always want to walk by and be like, I love how sweet you are with your kid right now. Or I love this or that, like compliments and gratitude or something that, yeah, definitely I love doing. And I think we all can do it more though, so can I. But could you imagine if our world was like that? If almost not, it's exaggerating, like if every interaction, but if 10 times in a day, somebody gave you a compliment or gratitude, like how different you would feel and how different the world would be. Like the energy that this world would be a completely different place.
Right. So yesterday I was at Chop Leaf getting, food, and there was one girl running the whole store by herself, and it was busy in there. One girl, cashier, making the food, making the bowls by herself. And so I was like third back in line waiting for her. And so and then she's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, don't be, you're doing a great job. And I could see her body go, oh, because she was stressed about how long it was taking. And I was like, you're good. And then I waited for her to make my food. At the end, she was like, here you go. Sorry about how it took so long. I was like, again, I just want to tell you, you're a rock star. Like, I want to phone your boss and say, oh, what a good job. And her body went, I saw her shoulders right to here. And she was like, oh, thank you. So I'm like, this poor girl literally is running the store by herself, but just like throw a deposit to be like, you got this, girl. Like you're doing so good. Take a second, like relax. And then I saw the people behind me who probably were a bit frustrated because they're taking my time go, yeah, that's true. Because they're feeling frustrated about their own stuff, their own timeline, their own stuff, not pausing to go, what's really happening? This girl's running the entire store, making all of our food by herself while running the till on the phone. And she had takeout people coming in, like those delivery guys coming in. I'm like, take a second, you're doing a good job. So you're right. Well, if we could challenge each other in your relationship, what do you appreciate your partner? But in life, could you say thank you to the cashier? Can you say thanks to the person that, made your freshies today? Can you say thanks to the person that, whatever it is, in the teacher at your school or the secretary at the school or that you're walking by on the street? Or can you just pause and throw gratitude in? Because it makes their body language, right? Their nervous system go, ah. And I think it has to be authentic. It has to be an authentic, I see you, to make their body relax.
Totally. Yeah. I love that.
Okay, here's some fun ones. So those first kind of ones came from a mixture between like some of Sue Johnson's questions. I skipped over a lot of those ones, but like, are there any unmet needs that are important to your partner that weren't met in childhood that aren't being met now? When does your partner feel physically and emotionally close to you? Can you share moments with your partner when you felt securely connected to your partner? Can your partner share those moments with you? And how do we create more moments of being securely connected to each other? So these are kind of like Sue Johnson's. She's got a couple of books out that these kind of come from. So I kind of pulled a few of those out of those different books. And those references, of course, are John Gottman. But these ones below here are kind of from, so I think it was in 97. I found this article, it was in like New York Times a long time ago, where a guy named Arthur Aaron, I believe he's a psychotherapist. I could be wrong. I don't know if he's a psychologist or what he is, but he created some questions for college students to try and assess to see if just asking questions can create emotional closeness. And then, of course, he went through these processes asking these students questions, and it was true. And they published the questions, and they were in like the New York Times and different newspapers. And the feedback, that's right, I saw it on a post, and people were responding to this feedback of how the questions went from like simple to deep. And by the end, people were saying how much they fell in love at the end of these questions. So they'd spend like 3 or 4 dates, first date night questions, and by the end they were in love. So this is come with these questions. So the first one started off with like, given the choice to be anyone in the world, who do you want to be? Or if you could have dinner, I know your answer to this. If you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who do you want to have dinner with? Right? Yours would be the Adam Sandler crew, like the comedy crew, right?
Yeah.
And why would that be your dinner guest? Like, what would you hope to gain from those questions? And so those kind of playful questions of like, what's something they've been dreaming about doing for a long time that you haven't done yet? And then they move deeper to, deeper questions like, what are your most treasured memories? How do you feel about your mother? How do you feel about towards your father? So we're getting into more of those attachment kind of deeper questions. If you were to die tonight, what regrets would you have in your life? Right? Or if you knew you were dying, you have a week left to live. Who do you want to be with? Who do you want to be around? What do you want to do for your last days on this earth? Like, those are some pretty deep questions. If you wake up tomorrow with a new ability, you have a magic ability tomorrow, what would it be? If you could have a superpower tomorrow, what would it be? And what would you do with it? And then to the deeper questions of, what is your most terrible memory? This is going into like your traumas or maybe unfinished business. Like, what are some things that linger for you that are unfinished? So yeah, so these are not like first date, but these are like later on questions. But for your partner, maybe moving through these really slowly. If you knew you were going to die, what do you want to change in your life? And what could you do today to change that one thing? What does friendship mean to you? What are the roles that love and affection have played in your life throughout your history of your life, or your history? What is something you've always wanted to tell me that you haven't been able to tell me?
Good one.
Those are all good ones. Yeah. So those are kind of those like Arthur Aaron questions that kind of go into deeper. And then of course you can look up people like, the 5 love languages, like what is your partner's love language? How does it change? And how does your partner prefer to receive love? How do you prefer to give love? And does it land for your partner? What's your ideal marriage? What are your aspirations for your future together? Or if someone could be like, as a couple, hey, if we did tell someone, if someone said, tell me a fun moment of you guys together. Like you and I have done that lots, but if you're telling about your partner with your partner, be like, tell us somebody, and my partner and I do this lots, like we're kind of classic for this because we could, my husband's a storyteller, his family is storytellers, right? They're probably their Aboriginal roots that's in their history of storytelling. And so they're always telling stories. And so it's really easy for me to be like, oh, this one time, and he'll tell a story about us, going to Estland together, going to Mexico or whatever, all the stories that you've all heard 1,000 times. But like, what would be a story that would be your go-to story? Or do you have a story that you can tell people that have never met you about your relationship? A story that signifies kind of who you are and what you stand for and kind of gives them a taste of who you are as a couple. What are some of those stories?
I like that even as like a take home too, as like a, we said earlier, how could you describe your partner if they were going to get taken care of somebody for a weekend? But how, if you were to introduce your relationship to somebody, what would you say? Like, and if you're not okay with what it is right now, like if you're like, well, we just were separated and, we both have an alcohol and drug problem and we've been cheating on each other and we've been really violent. I mean, I don't know, I'm exaggerating. These are like pretty big things, right? But I mean, you'd be like, oh, actually, I don't have to say that. So like, what are we going to try to cultivate and create now in our relationship? Actually, we always have each other's back. Like even when we disalign, we're the type that we work through things and we're really fun and playful together. Like we love to joke around. We flirt with each other all the time. Like this is something that we're always grabbing each other because we like to do that. Or we're really kind of quiet people and we love to just sit in peace together and we do yoga together and I don't know, whatever it is, but start to create like, how would you describe your relationship? And if you're not okay with that, then start to create a new one.
Yeah. So assignment could be a playful assignment could be if you were going to be introduced on a stage, you're the presenters and someone's going to introduce you as a couple. What do you want them to say about you? How do you want them to introduce you to a bunch of strangers? So that could be a fun assignment to do. And if you were to ask people that know you really well, your kids, your family, your best friends, how would they introduce you to family and friends? If they were going to be the MC at a event that you're at and they're going to introduce you, someone that knows you well, what would you want them to say about you? Because that'd be 2 different discussions.
Yeah.
And again, if it's like, I want them to say this, but that's actually not what we do. It's not what we stand for. There's your work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun stuff. So there's no limit to these. I mean, you can just go on the good old Google and Google these authors like the John Gottman, Sue Johnsons, Esther Perel I mentioned. She's got some great questions. You can just Google questions to create connections or make up your own or use the ones we talked about in here today. But there's no end to questions that you can ask each other to deepen connection, to deepen your knowing. And hopefully we've sold you on all the reasons why it's so important to do this questioning and to do this work.
Yes. Definitely. I mean, and I think just having the culture in your relationship of curiosity of like, I want to keep knowing you because I don't think that we ever fully know our other person because as we're growing, we're realizing more things, right? Like we're uncovering more about ourselves. We're like, oh, I didn't even know that. Like now I want to tell my partner about this thing about me that I didn't even know until now. Like something is like, hit me and now I understand this about myself. So just having that culture in your relationship of curiosity and and acceptance, not agreement. You don't have to agree with each other, but you do have to have a culture of acceptance of this is who you are, and I want to help that authentic you, your own flame. I want you to still burn bright, and I want to burn bright together. So how do we create that together?
And honor the shit out of it.
Yes. Cover it.
Cover it.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Okay. So deepen your love maps, deepen your questions, get to know each other in deeper, better ways.
Yeah. I think from the last podcast of understanding yourself, and then this one kind of piggybacking that, understanding your partner, those two are creating the we, right? We're understanding the middle is the both of us. So these are some really great kind of interventions for individuals and couples to do in their relationship. So
all right. And
go
let us
hard,
know
have fun.
how things are going. And if you want more questions, let us know. We'd love to. Shout out to Paige. I just want to say shout out to Paige because she got a hold of me and told me how much she enjoys. I'm like, we have people that listen to our podcast. We don't even know. I think I know if Paige and Ashlyn are our two fans. So
That's so nice.
Listen to your podcast. I'm like, really? Okay, good. Because we don't know how many people listen. It could be 1, it could be 10. I have no idea. It could be 110. I have no idea. So please DM us and let us know things that you like about it and what you want to hear more of and how these questions are going, or if they're landing or if they're not landing, like your feedback. We're doing this as a free service to serve. So we want to make sure it's serving.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we love the feedback and the connection. So any way that you can connect with us, that would be lovely. We'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Okay. Till next time. Peace.
See you later.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We're really glad you're here with us on this journey.
The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
See you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.